name is Jean-Christophe Bonis. We are now in Moscow for the Geek Picnic Festival, and the last interview, the last session, but the best one. Please be very, very aware because this discussion will be amazing. May I ask you kindly who you are? You are a rock star here. I saw you yesterday signing hundreds of autographs. Please explain people who you are.
I'm Lawrence Krauss. I'm a theoretical physicist and a writer, and I have a number of other hats as well, including this one, which I'm wearing right now.
So, were you here for talking about astrophysics?
I was talking about my most recent book, which is the greatest story ever told so far, which is a history of physics. I should also add that I direct a wonderful institute, which I think you'll be interested in, called the Origins Project, which looks at everything from the origins of the universe through the origins of consciousness and origins of xenophobia, violence, even. We just had a workshop on the future of artificial intelligence, which I know is a subject that you and I share many feelings about.
Many feelings, and we will talk about it. I was talking yesterday with a lawyer attorney in Moscow, and I discovered, in fact, that in Sweden, they were creating a Ministry of Future.
Oh, interesting.
That's concrete.
Well, that's nice. Every now and then governments should think about the future. I don't think they do that well.
You are traveling worldwide. Do you see most governments, some governments are more aware about that, thinking about that?
Well, I think there are governments that certainly plan for the future in many ways. I think the Nordic countries are a good example. They try to be sustainable in a way. There are other governments that can plan for the future that are more totalitarian. Take, for example, Singapore.
Yeah.
I was amazed when I was in Singapore that they had built a highway that wasn't being used now, but they knew in 10 years they'd have population there, so they were preparing. Exactly. And I thought, well, that's amazing, but only in a place like that's tightly controlled.
But at the same time, they're investing a lot in self-driving cars by startups, so it's interesting to see both ways.
It's true.
They are making both options on the table in case of it's not working.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's not such a bad idea. Hedge your bets, because as I often say, the problem with predicting the future is that you miss a lot of things. I mean, the future is a surprise. If it wasn't, I don't think it would be so interesting.
Are you optimist?
I'll tell you something I learned from a friend of mine who's a famous writer named Cormac McCarthy, who writes very dark books in the United States called The Road and No Country for Old Men. You may have heard of them. But he likes science, and we become friends. And when I first met him, he was very cheerful. And I said, how can you be so cheerful? Your books are so dark. And he said to me, I'm a pessimist, but that's no reason to be gloomy. That's become my mantra.
And that's also yours?
Yeah. I think on the whole, it's I have concerns about the future, both short-term and long-term. But I think making the most of the moment is really important.
We were together in the press conference on Friday.
Yes.
And you told something. Who amazed me a lot because it was very funny. You told people and me, by the way, that what is amazing in your job is the fact that you will be dead when what you are expecting will happen potentially.
Well, you know, it is a lot easier. I deal with cosmology, and one of the things of my research is understanding the very early universe, but also understanding the far future of the universe, which in many ways is much simpler than understanding the dynamics of what's happening today or tomorrow. And it is remarkable that we can say certain things with a straight face. And I've written about the probable future. It's kind of like Charles Dickens. It's maybe the future, because we can't say for certain. But the future of the universe, as it is most likely going to be, based on what we can measure now, which is an amazing fact that the universe is expanding ever faster. It's not slowing down like it should if gravity was attractive. Normally, we think gravity sucks, but in this case, it also blows. The energy of the universe is dominated by the energy of empty space, which is really weird. But if you take a region of space and you get rid of everything in it, it weighs something, and we don't understand why. But that causes a kind of cosmic anti-gravity, a repulsion, and the expansion of the universe is speeding up. And if you wait long enough, and in a paper I calculated 2 trillion years from now, all of the galaxies we now see in the universe will have disappeared because they'll be moving away from us faster than light. And people in the far future, if there are such, or beings, intelligent beings in the far future, there'll still be stars around in our galaxy in 2 trillion years. Maybe there'll be a civilization around those stars. They'll develop science, they'll develop cameras and technology, but they'll look out and they'll think they live in the universe that we thought we lived in 100 years ago. They'll see an empty, infinite universe. They'll have no idea that it's expanding because they can't see any galaxies. They'll think their galaxy is the only galaxy, and there'll be no evidence of the Big Bang. All of that will have disappeared. And then the stars will burn out and the universe will become cold, dark, and empty. And that's the future.
Thinking about that, you are very close to energy because you are talking about energy. Your job is talking about energy.
Yeah.
But macro energy.
Well, macro energy of the universe, but of course, I have a number of other hats. One of my hats is I'm chairman of the board of something called the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists that sets the doomsday clock. So I think about the future in shorter terms. And we recently moved the clock forward. Every year, for 70 years, we've set the clock. And there are several factors we're considering. One is nuclear weapons, of course, which is still an urgent and pressing concern, even though people seem complacent about it. But then there's climate change and energy. And these issues are of vital importance to me, and especially now that I live in the United States, of even more importance, because unfortunately in the United States, probably the only industrialized country in the world where all the parties that control government don't accept the reality of climate change. It's really an unfortunate thing. And of course, when it comes to energy, the need for sustainable renewable energy sources, which the previous government was of course supporting, and it is of vital importance. And it's amazing to see how many. It's heartening in some ways to see other countries taking the lead. It's sad that the United States, in some ways, has decided to step back, but other countries are taking the lead. I was amazed when I was in England 2 weeks ago, and England doesn't get a lot of sun, but I was amazed everywhere I went. There were huge solar energy fields full of solar energy, and I read that one day when I was there, a sunny day, for the first time, 25% of the energy in England was generated by solar power, which I would have never guessed would be possible for England, of all places in the world.
25% is a lot, yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot, especially for a country that doesn't get a lot of sun. Yeah, it's a surprise.
Being in link with energy, I would like to get back to my idea. Are you trusting, what is your opinion about the energy for people, personal energy? The link between macro and micro.
Well, we have our energy largely because of the sun. We are 80-watt heaters, 100-watt heaters if we're active, and so generating a little less heat than probably the light that's shining on us right now. And happily I had some ice cream, so I'm able to generate more
That's
energy.
why, yeah.
Yeah,
and a sunny day in Moscow.
Yeah, and what a lot of people don't realize that, they somehow think that life violates the second law of thermodynamics or something, which says that the universe is becoming more disordered in principle. But what it really says is a closed system. In some sense, energy always moves in a direction of disorder. But we're not a closed system. We have the sun. The sun right now is shining down on the earth, and every day about 10,000 times more energy is impinging on the earth than is used by humanity. But it's that solar energy that's ultimately resulting in you and I being alive, because it's the solar energy that gets converted into food and everything else. And so there's this need for life to get energy coming in order to maintain the order that we have. And of course, when a person dies, you see quickly how that order goes away.
Exactly. You are on the same level than Stephen Hopkins, we can say so?
I guess so, maybe.
So, are you also on the same opinions? Last month he had a great lectures in Cambridge, if my memory is good, about the future and what is happen, and saying everybody that if we are keeping following that way, in terms of energy, in terms of new technologies, and in terms of environments, human people, as we are, human being, will not be on Earth anymore in 100 years.
Well, I think Stephen's an old friend, and I've known him for many, many years. And he makes brief statements simply because it's hard for him to produce long statements now. I'm dubious about such predictions. I think in the near term, I differ with maybe Stephen and another person I know well, Elon Musk. I think that in the long term, the future of humanity is maybe in space, because of course, that's the very long term, because the Earth has a finite lifetime, and it's also a target for things like asteroids, which we may be able to defend against. That's another thing. But I'm not convinced that human space colonization in the near term is either viable or worthwhile. As a scientist, I'm much more interested in non-human exploration of
Yeah.
space. And the reason is quite simple. Because if you send humans into space, 99.9% of the money is spent keeping them alive and often getting them back. Whereas if you send a rover to Mars, it doesn't really matter. And as I often like to say, you can send a rover to Mars for the cost of making a movie about sending Bruce Willis to Mars.
You know, in Europe, my job as futurist is not very famous. In States, that's something very common. But in Europe, that's not that famous.
Oh, okay.
Everybody is looking at me in a very special way. Half people are joking or thinking that's, is it true, not true, or so on. And the other half are very interested and want to go deeper.
So do you, I worry, I mean, as I say, I take the easy road because we'll all be dead by the time you can check my predictions. But do you worry that as a quote-unquote futurist that, I said it the other day, and you probably disagree with it. If I look at the predictions of the future 50 years ago, in my opinion, they missed most of the important developments.
Yes.
Because technology produces surprising discoveries. So it's very difficult to predict down the road, even the near term, what are going to be the important technologies that affect society. Of course, there are ideas, and we know artificial intelligence, as we talked about, is going to be clearly a growth area. But they're always the ones that come out of left field, whether it's the discovery of penicillin or the internet. And so I'm always, well, I'm skeptical by nature. I'm a scientist, so I'm always skeptical of whatever I hear. So when I hear predictions about the future, I'm skeptical. And I wonder what you think about how you find it that way.
In fact, I totally agree with you on that way, but I disagree about the topic. Why? Because I don't think what is important now is to know what is happening in 20 years. I think what is important now is to think about the different scenario and to see what could happen, and in that way to think about the impact on society, to prepare people,
Exactly.
population.
As I said during the conference, in fact, with a former countryman of yours, Louis Pasteur, who said fortune favors the prepared mind.
Exactly.
And I think, yeah.
And that way, in that way, it's totally different, because basically my job is not to tell what will be in 20 years, because in 20 years, all the parameters will be totally different.
Okay, good.
My job today is just to aware people about what is important and the impacts that could have.
So we can try and be...
And on that way, it's totally, it's a good link. And the second point is totally different now than in Greek period and so on, is the fact that it's going so fast.
Yes.
Now we are talking about some stuff that will arrive. We will still be alive. In 20 years, 30 years, the impact on society will be huge. At that period of time, that was 100 years, and the impact on society were absolutely not in link with information and so on. So I feel very good in that way, because I try to stay on the global way and to warn people about the impact. And on the impact, in fact, we are quite clear, and most of the people, even us, if we are playing on different timing, we are totally aware about that.
Yeah, no, I think, in fact, that's what I do as well as a scientist and with the Bulletin, is to try and alert people to what's happening in the real world so that they can make more responsible decisions about policy.
Exactly. And that's, thank you for telling that, because that's opening exactly the mind and the road of the next question I would like to tell you. I deeply trust that we need to focus on the line between what is good and what is bad. Meaning, we can't. Today, we are almost gods. We are able to create life, to modify life. We are able to modify and to give life to kind of computers in some way, even if Kaspersky is not okay with that, but anyway. And it means that we have a lot of power, developing a lot of power, and in front of that, we don't have enough responsibilities. Meaning we are not enough aware about the social level of our responsibilities.
Well, I think, yeah, although I think that I spend a lot of time with, lately, in the community of, say, people who are developing deep learning machines, who are beginning to think about that, at least that recognize that there are key issues that have to be addressed because of unanticipated consequences of the development of artificial intelligence. And that's why we ran, the Origins Project ran a meeting on just that, bringing together AI people, security people, intelligence people, talking about the potential disruptive scenarios that AI might produce. So I think people are beginning to think about those things. Just like I have friends who do synthetic biology, and we've had meetings in my institute on that. And they had to get together and think, what are the constraints? Are there constraints? If you're creating new life forms, should there be some general consensus among the scientific community on what one should be allowed to do and not allowed to do? And I think the communities are, at least in my opinion, are beginning to think seriously about those issues. And it's really important that they do.
Well, yes, but we are very few. And the big problem is the fact that we are very few to be aware about what is happening. And when you are looking at the population, they are just impacted day after day, not having any idea about anything.
Yeah.
And the wave is a tsunami, and we are talking about huge ones, not very small ones,
Yeah.
because AI is one, but biotech, nanotechnology, robots, when we see what is happening by 20 years, it's absolutely crazy in terms of impact on jobs of population. And I can explain to people that, okay, now in automatization, you have South Korea. What are the three most important countries in the world in terms of automatization? South Korea, Japan and Germany. The three countries are full employment. Why? Because today, for one robot, you need 10 jobs
Yes,
around.
I heard you say that.
And I know, and here a lot of people are telling that, yes, but we need the jobs in data scientists and so on. That's not true. We don't need only data scientists. But people are afraid a lot about that.
Well, I think people, I mean, look, it's interesting that you say that, and I didn't know that statistic until I heard you say it the other day. But I do think it's really important to recognize that the jobs that humans do will change dramatically as more and more artificial intelligence is developed, and
That's a fact.
autonomous systems. And in fact, I think it is true that one will find that there'll be a lot of people who will lose their jobs, and the question is, how as a society do we respond to it? And I've talked to a friend of mine who's an economist about this a lot. Jeffrey Sachs is his name, and I agree with him that I think ultimately, as Keynes used to argue, Keynes long ago argued that when industrialization came out in full, what it would do is relieve us from tedious jobs, and society would spread those resources, and we could spend more time in art, music, literature. Well, that hasn't happened. But ultimately, I worry that I do think that autonomous systems will generate a great deal of wealth and that could benefit society as a whole. And that should be spread more equally around people who should be able to go to a coffee shop and read books by me or anyone else, or think, or write, or go to plays, or listen to music. And that we should use the fact that computers will be doing many more of our tasks to make our lives better. But I worry if the present is any guide, that what will happen is that the resources that are generated will go to a very small group of people who control those resources.
Yeah,
and we, as a future, I see one of two possibilities. Either we go that way with a very concentrated set of wealth and a lot of people who may find themselves displaced and discontent because of that, or whether we as a society are wise enough to realize that this could be a good thing for everyone and use it. And it's nice to see, at least, that in some societies that are moving that direction, there's at least full employment now.
That's right. I deeply think that everybody can change the world. You know, I know that it seems big for many people. For you as an American, that you are used to that, because many people have a vision of the world and they're doing more than business. Me, you know, I'm doing that for changing the world. For having the impact, using my voice, my reputation of butterfly effects, explaining what is happening and trying to give them options.
Yeah, well, I think, look, I think there's an expression that I use a lot as an educator, and that is, if the only tool you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And I'm an educator, and I do think that the best thing we can do for society as a whole is educate people about the realities of the world and what the potential changes will be, so that people will be more capable of taking the future into their own hands. I think that's really important. So in that sense, I think we agree completely.
I just want to finish because the time is running and we are not talking too much, but I meet a lot of young people, 20s. This period of time, they are in between following the road imposed by the society, religion, and so on, and trying to follow the dreams. And in between, most of the time, they don't know how to deal with that, and they are more and more afraid, for some of them, about what is happening in terms of future and short problematic we can fit all the time. What kind of advice can you give them? Because you are now in the third part of the life. Don't take it bad, but meaning the good ones, taking things with distance.
I'll take it well. but I hesitate to give people advice in general. The more advice I tend to give young people is don't let the bastards get you down. Namely, remember what you're excited about. Remember why you're excited about it. And follow your passions.
Exactly, vibrate.
So true. Because if you don't, you won't enjoy yourself and you won't do a good job. So too many young people, of course, are worried about money and jobs, and I can understand that in hard times. But ultimately, in any career, there's going to be, in any institution, there are going to be huge setbacks and problems and issues, and often you lose sight of why you're doing what you're doing. So if you could just remind yourself of that periodically, to give yourself the motivation to continue, I think that's really important.
Thank you for your time. That was a great talk.
Okay, thank you.
Guys, you are here now, and we keep following, because that this kind of talks are changing a lot, and please follow this guy, because the next time we will have a discussion about something much more deeper, and that means that we need to meet again.
Yes, absolutely.
And I will definitely come to your institute.
Oh yeah, come to Arizona. Not in the summertime. But
thank you a lot.
Okay, thanks again.